Well, hello everybody at home. I was doing that yesterday and wasn't it awesome? Today I'm here to talk to you about bionics. Bionics is the science of engineering, medicine and biology, all mixed together, and we're at a very exciting stage of our lives. Bionics have now been revealed as a way to heal, repair and find another key for longevity. Longevity meaning a long life that's rewarding and well-lived. I'd like to start where I started. In the 70s, there was a beautiful professor, Professor Graham Clark, who you see on your screens, who found the key that enabled the bionic ear to work. One day, he was sitting on the beach with his children, and he was supposed to be babysitting, but he wasn't. He was working out what he could use that would be the missing link. And he was very well motivated because his dad was a deaf pharmacist, and he really wanted to help his father to communicate on intimate, quiet topics with his clients. So Graham was sitting down there on the beach, picked up a conch shell off the beach, which looks like the cochlea of the ear, the part that's damaged in someone who has a severe, profound or total hearing loss. And then he picked up a blade of beach grass, fat at the bottom, skinny at the top, with a stiffening band right up through the middle. And he looked at threading it through the conch shell, as you see in the picture here. And what he found was the missing link for replacing damaged hearing cells in the cochlea. This was such an exciting time in life, but he explained it to me later, the significance, as he'd come to realise it. It was the first time that the human brain, the human consciousness, and a replaced human sense had been interfaced together. And this exciting technology became the bionic ear, or the cochlear implant. You'll see a picture of it there on the screen now. It works using a tiny microphone on the top of the outside of the ear, a little microprocessor or mini computer, and then a cord that takes the sound signal across to a round transmitter coil which sits by magnetism onto an implant which a surgeon has surgically implanted underneath the skin. And it travels the sound travels as a radio wave from there into the implant down to an electrode array with 22 electrodes on it, which is wound round just like that blade of grass through the cochlea of the ear with 2.5 twists. And what that electrode array does is it replaces the damaged part. The message as an electronic signal now travels straight up the auditory nerve and straight to the hearing area of the brain. In the 1970s, when this was developed, we really didn't know what had occurred, how significant this moment was. What we didn't know was that this was the first commercialised available device ever for a neuromodulation device, a device that interfaces with the brain and the nervous system and changes it, in some cases, forever. So I came along in the early 90s. We, at that stage, the first child in the world had been implanted in Sydney in 1987, and I was anticipating that this surgery, this brilliant surgery, which had the power to access the brain, would be coming to Queensland soon. And I set up a not-for-profit called Hear and Say, because up to that time, profoundly deaf children had been able to sign, but they didn't learn to listen and speak clearly. And what happened then, in anticipation of the bionic ear coming, I was duly approached by a wonderful ENT surgeon, Dr. John Quayle, who came to see me one day in the 1992 to say, would you join us and 18 ENT surgeons? We're going to start a Queensland cochlear implant program. Well, I didn't even have to think. My answer was a huge yes. So the rest is legendary. What I found was that my job was to teach the brain of the adult or the child to learn to hear the sound, understand what the sound meant, which was a new electronic signal, and then speak clearly enough for people to understand you. What I saw when the first child was switched on was this amazing reaction. I'm sure many of you have seen it on YouTube. There's this wonderful look on a child's face. Even the youngest baby, 6 months is our best age, they will have this beautiful expression on their face. But the best moment of all is when they hear their parents' voices for the first time. And this to me was an absolute pinch-me moment. I was very thrilled to be the person who worked out with these professors and doctors how to use the brain training to get the best out of the device. And what I hit on was to use, for children, use parents as partners, because children were learning from the very first grassroots principles. So using parents as partners to train the brain, and that was the soft technology. To add that to the hard technology that Professor Graham Clark invented, we had found this missing link, which put all of it together and allowed children to learn to listen and speak at the same rate as children with normal hearing, if everything is put together in the right order. So now, Hear and Say, which is the centre that I set up, is working all over the world to teach professionals how to do this job to the best, to the most optimal outcomes for the children. So we now have a situation where we've set up a clinical model, a successful clinical model, which has given us the key to longevity for an adult. So adults are very good users of bionic ears, but only if they've had the brain training. But what they do is that they help to prevent cognitive decline as the person ages. If dementia is the most significant health and social problem of the 21st century, and we have 50 million people in the world with dementia, and this is set to triple by 2050, we then have to look at different ways that we can help to prevent that happening. So there was a wonderful study by a person called Jill Livingston, which was published in The Lancet in 2017. And what that study said was that of all the things, all the factors that cause dementia, only 35% of them are able to be varied or changed. And out of all of those factors, hearing loss and treating hearing loss in midlife and later to the end of life is the one factor that gives you the biggest bang for your bucks in helping to prevent dementia. Because it helps to keep the hearing levels up, the brain is stimulated, the person doesn't become isolated, they don't become depressed, they don't become dependent, and there are so many ways that they can enjoy life. So in 2013, I decided that the bionic ear was going so well with these legendary outcomes that I wanted to do something else to help mankind. And what I was seeing is that all the professionals who were working in the bionic ear were then moving into starting to work on other bionics devices, including Dr. Daniel Timms, who invented the Bivacor, or a bionic heart. I'd realised that it had had to move offshore to Texas because it hadn't been able to get the funding. I also saw that people were working in ivory towers and they were isolated from each other and they weren't starting to build their teams. So what I did is I started to put together a national group of bionics workers, stakeholders, and then in 2016 I came back to Queensland and started Bionics Queensland here. It was formally launched in 2019 by Minister Kate Jones, and from then on we are having a magic ride because all of a sudden we have some stakeholders who are able to put together all their resources to help develop the next wave of technology. So included in those stakeholders here in Queensland are QUT, Griffith University, University of Queensland, Metro North Health and Hospitals Board, Metro South Health and Hospitals Board, and many others are joining us. So we are forming a group that will be able to develop the devices of the future. People like Professor Mia Woodruff, who's been working with Hear and Say to develop a prosthetic external ear for a child who does not have one. And we have now got to the stage where there's a prosthetic ear has been developed. The next step is to biofabricate a biodegradable scaffold and then impregnate that with the child's skin and cartilage cells. And Professor Woodruff would like then to put a hearing device inside the ear, funding permitting. People like Dr. R.J. Pandey, who are working in the senses and the sense of touch, which will be marvellous for people who've got robotic limbs. So everywhere the case is building, and technologies like VR, AR, AI, machine learning, data science, quantum computing, all of those pieces are coming together as well and causing this great convergence, which is allowing the whole science to take off together. People like Dr. Fiona Kerr from the Neurotech Institute, and people like Dr. Nigel Greenwood, whose team Machine Genes and Neuromatics teams have combined together to form a bionic pancreas, and they have just returned from New York after competing in the IBM Watson AI X Prize. We wish Nigel and his team a lot of luck. But what I particularly wanted to do, what my next dream is to do something special for bionic limbs. I wanted to see that the bionic limbs people use today actually become more technologically ready and available. So for people like Matthew Ames, who's an environmental engineer, but he also has quadruple amputations, and what they've done is that they mean that his mobility was reduced, and his 4 young children, some of whom you see in this picture, he wants to work with them and his wife Diane to form a family group that he can stay at home, he can work, and he can do all the things he wants to do with his life. So here's Matthew with his bionic arms, and he drives his car, he goes skiing, he travels the world. He's a well-loved public speaker and very inspirational man. He has bionic arms which have got targeted muscle innervation, where he's got a nerve that's re-implanted in his shoulder that takes his brain messages from his brain down to the muscles of his shoulder, which he's able to move when he wants to move his arm, and lo and behold, his hand works. He's able to use all the different pieces that are put together. He's got an elbow and a wrist and a B-Bionic Ottobock bionic hand and a number of other components, including AI, which help his arms to work to the highest level so he can drive a car. But there's one problem. We have no complete product line for his component parts, so that sometimes if he breaks a part, which he doesn't know which one's going to break next, they cost a lot of money. They have to be sourced from all over the world. We want to do the surgery here, and we want to be able to have the right pieces for those devices to help many, many other Australians and people in the world, just like Matthew. We have now a very, very exciting time because the Bionics Queensland Challenge 2020 is underway, and it is open now for applications. It's Australia's first ever Bionics Challenge, and there's a share of $165,000 in cash prizes are able to be won. Bionic mobility is innovations in design, manufacturing and functionality of prostheses, sensors, wearables, technology applications and the allied services, the clinical services that go along to make it work. bionic sensors, which are breakthroughs or improvements in implants and devices that replace or enhance the sensors, and related stents, technologies, smart wearables, and allied services, again, the clinical services. And lastly, neural and AI-enabled bionics is the third prize, in which we're looking at next-level discoveries in brain-computer or brain-machine interfaces, neurobionics, AI-driven software, organ software, prostheses, and devices. So it's a very, very exciting time. And if you have a look on the Bionics Queensland website, www.bionicsqueensland.com.au, you will see that you can enter as long as you've got a Queensland-based leader. Society is at a really special moment. Never before have we come to this spot where we have great inequality of everything, particularly for technology. We have to have the policy that everyone must become a change maker so that we can work out how to work in fluid, multiple teams of teams to get the jobs done for the next generation of bionics devices. In every age, there exists those people who rise to the challenge of their times. They see a way to bring a gift to the world that will meet the pressing needs of difficult problems. They see the way to expand the possibilities of the human life, and many of you are watching here today. They are not deterred by predictors of failure, but are drawn forward by dreams of hope. They are energised by faith and commitment and are sustained by seemingly inexhaustible spirit. Often their dreams seem impossible, but those who succeed give us our lives. Join us at Bionics Queensland to transform lives.